Hi, and I am Dan Fuller. I'm a principal at BDO USA in our digital transformation and innovation group. And so I'm the project sponsor of a product that we have called BDO UserVerse. That UserVerse, you can find a case study on it on Microsoft.com. And what is UserVerse? It's a service delivery model, a first of its kind. And what makes it the first of its kind is that it's the only product that's entirely within the Microsoft ecosystem, leveraging all the power of every one of their products to come to one delivery type of model that can service, from your sale all the way to the delivery of your product, whether that be a manufactured product, professional service product, all those pieces. How did we get there and what makes it special? Well, we started with an idea, hired a great firm to go build it, and you always ask about what are some of those failures. Well, let's just say a large dollar sum later, we had a failed project. It didn't work. And when I came in, that's when I came in to kind of help fix that. It was what we dissected. What were we trying to? We were trying to build Microsoft's products. And what I found was it was nice being a little naive because I come from the process side, not necessarily the tech side. Is that like you need Microsoft to do that? Microsoft doesn't even know how to connect some of their products. And so we actually went out and hired Microsoft, pitched their team, and they said, yeah, we'll help you build this. And what is it? Well, it starts in teams, right? And we said, okay, accountants don't like change. So how do we make this feel more natural? Well, if it's in teams, if it's in a Dynamics platform, they understand that piece of it. And so Microsoft came in and we created the entire module. So the module starts in CRM. That's where sales is, right? Sales is the most important piece. What people are failing is they'll have a CRM system over here, but doesn't connect to their work. How many times I've got a friend, Scott, that has a company and he does sales. He'll sell something and then he goes over to his team and says, well, you need to do this. He said, whoa, there's a disconnect between what I'm doing and what you just sold. So what we do is when you do that quote and you do that piece within the CRM, which is already there in Dynamics, it then becomes your budget. That budget goes into your financial. Now you've got the traction and the collaboration there. That collaboration within that piece allows me to set my gross contribution margin and track that through the financial history. Then once that's a project, I go into my workflow management. That's my project operations piece. I then set up the tasks, the workflow for the specific type of work that Scott sold in this example. If Scott said, oh, the client's going to do this, it won't be in my workflow. So then my people, when they're doing the work, if the client says, I need you to do this, that's a change order. So let's negotiate that up front, not when we've already done the work, right? And they say, oh, we would have done it if you had told us about that, right? So it gets that piece in. That then goes into, which is the hardest piece for us to build, is a client repository. We take a custom SharePoint piece, and that goes into our project operations. And so our people don't ever go into the SharePoint, they kind of go through here. The key to that is metadata. Everyone talks AI. AI is only as good as the data below you, right? So if you don't get your data straight, you're not going to be able to use all these cool things coming for some time. So what we said is our data's a mess, right? We weren't so we drew a line in the sand. I can't fix the past that fast, but I can start today. And so within this application, within SharePoint, we created metadata tags. And we learned that we have what I call standardization with flexibility. So your methodology or process becomes metadata tags for that. Those surface like folders, because everyone likes folders, right? They don't want to look like a G drive, but it's really metadata tags. But then we learned, so in Scott's example, he sets it up, it automatically populates those folders. But then there's transactional metadata. There are unique things, like we have a forensics practice. So after evidence, the evidence is unique to the type of work. You can then create your own metadata tags for that transaction that aren't part of your master data. Then we circle that back up into Resource Manager. There's some things that Microsoft is working on their next release in Project Ops that'll make this more powerful. But then we're using that Resource Manager to say, okay, Scott sold this project over here. It then kicked off the financials. We're now tracking that. We now have this workflow. We know what we want. Who's the staffing that can do that? Because it's in the ecosystem, when Scott's upselling, he can actually go into the system and see who's available to be able to determine that and what the time is. And then he might say, well, listen, I've got availability here. It's cheaper because I have a lot of resources here. Then you want it in a busy season, it's going to be more expensive. So it gives you all of that rich data that encompasses everything. Then in the center of that is integrations, insights and reports. So because we have all of this data, we're able to do things that others aren't. I'll give you an example. What is that? If you look at, we call it the power score, right? Everyone, we're a resource. Our number one resource is our people, like many people here at this conference. And so what we said is, how do you manage that resource? And how do I, if I don't work with Scott, how do I know if Scott's good or not if I get him on a job? Well, what we did is gamify, right? That's the big key. So we said, we know from our data what type of project it is. Consolidated tax return using, one source income tax in the retail industry. So I already have that. So I take that for Scott and I say, okay, if Scott's working on this piece of it, I know that's what I'm trying to measure. I know how many hours he worked on it from my ERP because I know the project. Then each project has a simpler, intermediate, or complex. So I know the skill level that was required. All those are factors that then combine to a 1 through 5 score of how did Scott do on that project. So what I just did is create a power score. So when you pull up Scott, I can see what his experience level is on corporations versus Anna's experience level on that. And then I correlated to, well, I want to get a review, and why do I give someone a review? I already told them they did good. Well, now it goes into my power score. Well, just like Fortnite, a lot of our people have played that, they can go look at themselves. And we're not making it to be who's better than the other. We're saying, listen, you can have different skills in different areas. I'm giving you the ability to make it better and let people visually see it. So those are the types of things that we're doing to try to take the data, to be able to use it, solving the problems that we have in the business now that we have the key infrastructure.
Amazing. So tell me why you enjoy being at Summit. Why do you travel?
To learn. So I'm a unique person. So at BDO, we have our digital team, and that team does consulting, which is mostly what Summit is. I'm actually their customer. And so they have me come because, they do my work, but I'm the customer. So for me, I'm talking to clients, right? And people in my shoes. What did you learn? How did you roll out your AI program? What were some of the unique things that you did, right? Like one of the examples we were sharing back and forth programs. We created in our implementation a new program, right? Everyone has change agents. Oh, or a champion, the worst word ever. Oh, guess what? You're a champion now. So, we created like VIP, validate, integrate, and promote. So if you're on a VIP team, that means you start with the user stories, you validate that we're doing the right things, you help us integrate that, so you're doing the user acceptance testing, and then your promoters, you're teaching and you're getting people on board in the system. So learning from people about what was successful and how to integrate that back into my world with the people we are, it's an invaluable resource to be able to share within that community from there. Also the vendors, to hear the technology, it's changing so fast. If you look at 3 years ago, when I started this project, we were using a firm out of the UK doing algorithms. So they were mathematicians, right, and computer science. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, Dan, we got this thing called Copilot. We're going to not use that now. We're going to use Copilot. And, you really needed a Copilot to know what Copilot to use. But Copilot's now evolved where it's getting to that agentic piece now, which is helping there. So hearing the stories of what's available from this agent and how are you using that, and the buzzword of the week, MCPs are everywhere, right, on that piece. What is an MCP? How do I use those pieces? So it's just that kind of sharing. And everyone, whether they're a competitor, whether you don't know them, they're always so open to talking about where they're at to kind of share within that community.